And so that's my hope for the future, is that regardless of where an individual lives in the world, they can they can expect to have the same level of healthcare. And this is going to extend well beyond understanding what needs to be done, which is what Canary is doing. It's providing individuals, clinical team members, with enough information to make an accurate diagnosis. The diagnosis is done by them, but it's based on information they have and or can acquire through the conversation with a person. But there are many, many, many other things futuristically that will occur that will allow us to deliver healthcare, literally to deliver it to remote locations, to gauge populations so that we can allow individuals to become better trained, to have a broader understanding. Information should be free, and it is free and is available. So people can progress in a way in which we have the ability to care for individuals regardless of where they are in the world, regardless of what language they're speaking.
Welcome back to the MedTech 101 podcast, and today it's quite new. It's something that also kind of boggled my mind when I first heard about it. Basically, vocal biomarkers, and that's what today's episode is going to be about. But it's before we even get there and talk about what this company is doing that's exciting and the successful seed rounds they've done from last year. Today I'm joined by Henry O'Connell, who is based out of Utah, which I'm quite excited for because it's the first company I've had from Utah coming on the podcast. It's mostly companies in California or on the East Coast of the United States. So without really delaying too much, welcome to the podcast, Henry.
Rodney, thank you very much. It's really a pleasure to be with you.
I'm really honored. The pleasure is mine. And you've been working on something that's been really exciting, and I'm really honored to have you guys here today because I think this is so relevant to a lot of people. I know a lot of people tend to accuse my generation of being the snowflake generation, so it's quite exciting to hear if there's something that's better that's coming out to pick out mental health issues and basically make everyone's lives much better. So but before we even get started, could you please tell us about yourself, like your background, basically, leading up to Canary Speech?
Sure. Now, Canary Speech was founded by myself, Henry O'Connell, of course, and Jeff Adams. Jeff and I have a relationship that goes back 45 years. At the time, I was at the National Institutes of Health in a group doing research in neurological diseases. Jeff was at another institution called the NSA, our spy group. He was building mathematical models to de-encrypt spy messages at that time. He's a mathematician by training. And Jeff and I, from that time forward, for 45 years, we had just been dear friends. Our family know each other very well, just dear friends. And he was instrumental in the field of speech and language, developing medical dictation software, Dragon Naturally Speaking, developing legal dictation software, developing some of the core technologies that today we take for granted. Things like Siri were based on code and fundamental and foundational things that he did. He led the team to build the Amazon Echo as well. So things that are used around the world where we speak to devices and they respond intelligently. Jeff was involved in doing that. 9 years ago, Jeff and I had the opportunity in our careers where we both were looking for the next adventure, if you will. And he was here in Provo, Utah. He had graduated from Brigham Young University. He had been speaking with them and asked to talk to the mathematical department and other departments about entrepreneurship. And we met at a bagel shop, and we thought we'd have lunch together, catch up on family things. And we got talking. And 8 hours later, Canary Speech was born out of that conversation. So that's how Canary Speech got born. As we're talking today, I'll give you probably more anecdotes and stories about some of the things that occurred. But both of us had backgrounds. Mine was originally in research, and then for 20 years before this, I was engaged in corporate turnarounds, involved in companies that were in distress. I would go in technology companies, Jeff was involved, as I said, in speech and language for years and led teams that built things that never existed before.
Nice, nice. That's really exciting. And it's always exciting how some of the best ideas we have come at the most random times when no one is expecting it.
Yeah,
And yours came over lunch, so I'm quite happy to hear that. And now we're here today. So, but again, the thing that's like kind of mind boggling is how do okay, just to even go back a few steps back for the listeners on the podcast, because I try to really simplify things for people, like in a very simplified way, how would you describe vocal biomarkers? What exactly are they for someone who's listening who doesn't have a background in medical technology, or a tech background, or a biological background?
sure. Well, Jeff and I were talking about some of the things he had been doing in life. The Amazon Echo, he had just finished up that project, and he was relating to me how broad speech could be used because it's such a natural thing. I mean, you and I are talking right now. We're not generally thinking ahead of time of what we're going to say. We're prompted by questions and inquiries, interactions we're having with people. Um, it's the most complex motor function in the body to create language. Hundreds of different languages exist throughout the world. We fluently communicate things without conscious thought. Um, and I asked him a simple question. I said, "Well, Jeff, what's left on your table? I mean, what are some of the things you wanted to do that you haven't yet done?" And one of the things he mentioned to me was the to use speech and language as a tool for identifying human condition and disease. And he told me where the field had been for 25 years of research. There had not been a practical product that had been developed. And when he told me this, I thought to myself, and I knew nothing really about speech and language 9 years ago. But I thought to myself, I know a lot about interacting with people. And whenever we interact with people, and clinical teams do this all the time, doctors, nurses, nurse practitioners are doing this constantly, but so are parents.
Yes.
When I'm interacting with an individual, I have a sense and we call it a sense or intuition. I have a sense for whether or not this is a good day for them. I mean, even a stranger on an elevator, you'll ask them, "How's your day going?" Because we
Yes.
sense that it's not going well. And
Yes.
I said to Jeff, I said, he knows my family well, and my wife and I have 5 children. I said, when Caitlin would get home from soccer practice, when she was still in high school, and at that time she was married and had her first child. Today she has 2 children, 2 boys, two of my grandchildren of 9. And I said, when she would come in from soccer practice, as she was walking across the room, and it's 6:30 at night or something, and I'm looking at her, I would know whether or not she was having a good day just from watching her walk. And when she looked at me, her facial expressions gave me indication of good day, bad day, whether she was anxious or angry or happy or sad or excited. And I would
Yes.
say to her, "How's your day going?" And every parent knows the answer because all of us get the exact same answer. Fine. And then maybe thank you, depending on whether it was a bad day or a good day. Fine. And she would continue to walk, and I'd go, "No, no, 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 time out," and she would come over and we would work our way through some things. And was it chemistry? Was it soccer practice? Was it the coach? Was it a teacher? What's going on? And I said to Jeff, I said, what I've realized is she doesn't live with me anymore. It's not my best day. I'd still have her there, but she's married. She has her life. She's developing. And I'll admit I call her at least twice a week. It's more frequently than that, but I don't want to be considered a hovering parent. So I call her. And
Yes.
when the call starts, and it has nothing to do with the words she's speaking to me, I no longer have the physical cues and I can't see her gait and her walk or any of those things. I know whether it's a good day or a bad day. And again, it has nothing to do with the words she's speaking. And I know if she's anxious or she's angry or she's happy or she's sad. And I know that within moments. And I said to Jeff, I said, um, how are we doing that? Because for clinical teams, if you really want to analyze for a disease and human condition, clinical teams are doing that all the time. They're sitting with patients and they're asking them questions, and they know there's a disconnect potentially between what the patient is saying and what they're observing. And I said, if we could create a tool that could be in their hand, that could validate that objectively, then we would be providing them with something that would be very, very nice to have. I mean, it could be, in fact, critical in analyzing and participating in identifying disease in human conditions. So he just said, I don't know. I don't know how we're doing that. But it doesn't have anything to do with the words people are speaking. So that's how Canary got started. What we realized is what people do every single day of their lives, both clinically trained and parents and others and friends, strangers on elevators. You see a person having a tough day, and we have empathy for them, and we say, can I help in some way? You know, sit down and have a coffee with me, or whatever it is we do here in Utah. We don't generally have coffee with them, but as you know, but we
Yeah.
sit down and we have something with them, and
Yes.
we exchange. So that's what got Canary started. This recognition that our machine learning tool, which is our brain, was picking up on cues that are not word based, that are sublanguage element. And so today, Canary Speech looks at 2,548 different cues, data elements of speech, every 10 milliseconds. And what that means in a minute of time, we're looking at 15.5 million data elements. And we're analyzing those for a range of different diseases that we have correlated with clinical teams in hospitals across different languages.
Wow. Now that's really impressive, really, now that I think of it. And just even like I'm quite impressed by how many. I think you might even do that better than humans, because again, sometimes as you move from country to country, different expressions are expressed differently. For example, and sometimes if you're in a environment which you know with your kids, you know, okay, maybe my kid had a bad day today or something like that.
Yeah.
And but as you start to scale up, it becomes even much better, because if you go to a different environment, what someone might indicate as a sad day might actually be a good day for them, and what's a good day might be a bad day for them as well. So it's quite exciting to hear how everything is basically being analyzed. And obviously, I think the question that everyone has right now is, do you then interact with, is it an app that people have to interact with on a daily basis that sort of like asks them questions, or is it something that's sort of like just running in the background of your computer that sees maybe how you're using it, or your phone, or whatever it is? How exactly does it work, and how do people interact with it?
That's just such an intuitively important question. Voice and conversation occurs everywhere. It's a normal function of interaction for us. It's very, very complex. It's surprisingly simplistic for how complex it really is. Imagine all these languages and all this set of
Yeah.
emotions and things that we're communicating. We do it without conscious thought, which is important also because it makes the information more objective in nature rather than subjective, which is means it's more valid. It's an objective piece of information. Wherever audio is captured between individuals on smartphones, on smart tablets, on video conferencing like you and I are doing right now, we could deploy it so that you could be seeing how Henry's anxiety level is, and so we built this system so that it's a healthcare data secure um, system that respects the personal rights of individuals. We function at the same level for those elements as a hospital does, and we're deployed within hospital centers. But video conferencing, telephone calls, in-person meetings where we're recording information on smart devices. The most important thing we found as we developed the technology about 2 years ago, we transitioned to what is called ambient listening. So we could actually, instead of saying to a person, tell me what you see in this picture, or tell me how your day is going, we use conversational speech. So what they say doesn't matter because we're not actually analyzing the words they're using. We're analyzing how those words have been created by the central nervous system. So we're just listening to conversation and we're tracking a long time. And we're capable through AI to understand when we have enough information. So 10 seconds of speech here, 12 seconds of speech there from the individual. And when it totals 40 seconds, we know that and we analyze it in real time streaming and we return scores within milliseconds. So if a doctor and a patient are talking, or a nurse and a patient are talking, or anyone in the clinical care, or a parent is speaking with their child in the privacy of their home, confidential conversation, they may be sharing how they're doing with their behavioral health, their emotions, their depression, or their anxiety levels. Um, all of that's happening in ambient listening. So we're not intruding into the conversation. We're simply listening to the conversation. That that and the fact that can be returned while the conversation is still being had means that a doctor or a nurse can look at their smart device and what they're seeing is a disconnect to what they're being told potentially. The person, they're my
Yes,
age, they're asked, how are you doing? Like that young teenager daughter of mine. How is your day going? She says, it's fine. I knew it wasn't fine. I knew there was
true.
something happening. So that allowed me to explore that with her. That's the human empathy coming out. In a clinical environment, we're looking for the opportunity to accurately assess how the person is doing. If you're an older person like myself, my parents were in World War II. A bad day for my father was crawling around on the ground during the war. And he knew that. So that's what's in the back of my mind. So if someone says to me, how's your day going? Well, that's bad. My day's a lot better than that, you know? And so,
It's all relative.
yeah, it's relative. But I may still be depressed or I may still be anxious, you know? And the words I'm speaking to them are chosen by my experience in life, which helps my anxiety and depression, but may not totally control it. So now I'm measuring elements that are driven by our central nervous system, which are much better objective measurements of my anxiety. And I can do that without interfering in the conversation between two people. So that's what's wonderful. And you can do that in a consumer way in a person's home, or you can do that in a clinical environment. And you can do that in multiple languages too.
Nice. And then I think the obvious question here is, as much as you work on in listening, this ambient listening stage where people can have a conversation at home and it listens. Yeah, can then people then create sort of like an account and then interact with it daily and then see the algorithm improve like in a personalized way to say, okay, I know what your happy days are like, I know what your sad days are like, and then the more you use it, the better it becomes for you as an individual on a personal level. Does it work like that?
It absolutely does. Again, that's just intuitively very smart a way of thinking of this. So we can track an individual over time using either our own app, Canary Speech's app, or we interface with a few hundred companies where they're providing services either to clinical or to consumers, and Canary is in the background as a tool that enhances their own functionalities. And so an individual can not only be measuring anxiety, depression, or behavioral health, but they could be measuring cognitive health. They can be measuring how tired they are, you know. And if over time they don't see their energy levels tracking high, uh, demonstrating, that they're restful, that their sleep was good, or they may be coming home from travel and find that it takes them 3 days to recover to their normal baseline. So everything in that 40 seconds that I've talked about, we can measure 12 or 14 different things in that 40 seconds. We may only be measuring three because a person says, well, I want to know where my anxiety, depression is. I want to know where my energy levels are. Measure those things. But if it's an older patient, they may be tracking, how's my cognitive health? and we measure their cognitive health. Is their cognitive health tracking and normal and continuing to be in a healthy range for them? So those are the kind of things we can do. We track things like Huntington's and Parkinson's disease and MS. Um, we are going to be introducing later this year, we're going to be introducing ADHD and autism for parents working with their children or clinicians working with those patients. Um, and right now we're in English, Spanish, and Japanese, but we're moving into Dutch and German and French. And we're also deploying in Abu Dhabi and Arabic.
Oh wow. That's so would that mean that you guys are gonna have offices or like centers in these locations, or is just like since it's something that's a digital product, or is it something that's not really restricted to geography, or can people download it or buy the software from anywhere? What how do people get hold of this?
People can generally download an English version or a Spanish version of our software anywhere, or Japanese, they can download that too. Dutch and German will be available later this year. Arabic will be available later this year. Those are the types of things. And then we'll add other languages. French will come on board this year sometime. So those are the kind of things that can be deployed worldwide. It doesn't matter where you live in the world, you can do this. And Canary Speech is available. But partners, we primarily commercialize with partners like Microsoft or Zoom or Samsung or LG, SMK in Japan, and others. So we have partners who have incorporated our technology into offerings that they have, solutions they offer to either businesses or people.
Nice. And I couldn't help but think, Henry, that out of the sort of like 2,500 cues that the machine looks for, like what cue could, well, like what one example could you give us that people
Mm,
do when they're upset that maybe they might not think of, like, like on a day-to-day basis? Do they frown their eyes a little bit more? Are their voices deeper? From your experience working in Canary Speech, what's one thing would you say it's like a cue that the machine looks for that like normal people don't really think about? Because I think I'm quite curious to know.
sure. So if an individual is getting excited or anxious about something, so their anxiety level is rising. What you find is that, and this is controlled by their vocal cords, and not consciously. So
Well,
there's the speed at which they talk will speed up, and the um, the tonal elements, the pitch rises, and this can happen like this. We can, you can, and what's so funny is that it you can hear cheers or yells in the distance, and we know that it's a mother or a grandmother or a grandparent at a soccer match of a football match of a grandchild or a child versus an alarming thing that's happening on the street. You know, we know that that kind of elevated pitch or elevated sound is either one of excitement and cheering versus an alarm system. So the vocal cords control that along with other functions like the lung function. All of those are self-conscious, and the vocal cords begin to vibrate faster and tonal elements go up. How fast they go up, how fast they recover, I think are elements that we pick up on that let us know that it's a football game or a soccer match versus a car accident.
well,
And we know the difference. We can't see it, but we hear the noise and we know that's an alarm
that's so
that.
true.
And so the vocal cords play an element, but and we measure about 2 dozen different things in the function of the vocal cords. So of those 2,500 elements we're measuring, a few dozen of them are related to how the vocal cords are functioning, how rapidly they're changing in speed, how rapidly they recover, how they impact on the loudness of our speech, how they impact on the tonal elements of our speech, all of those things. And there are other elements, there are many different elements of speech, but that's one that all of us could kind of tune into. We know we have vocal cords, and we know when we get excited, we speed up and our tones go up. And that's the kind of exciting thing. And our behavior can be tracked consistently across populations by understanding how the vocal cords are functioning. And we can pick that up in speech, not the words
That's so true.
spoken, but how words are created from that.
Definitely, I agree. I agree with you that I think it's quite exciting to hear that because I think that will be new information for a lot of people, especially for me as well. Like I definitely learned a few things there, but it's amazing how we process things subconsciously, and it's quite nice to see this being translated into a technological product that's working to help us. But but the like the follow up question would be like I know like obviously you guys had a really successful seed round last year. I think about something like $13 million raised. Maybe I'm wrong. That's what Google says. But with all that sort of like backing behind you and all that support, like what would you say now is like the biggest hurdles that you guys are facing and like right now is it like something that's sort of like teaching people how to integrate this technology into their lives? Or is it teaching the market? Or is it maybe regulatory difficulties? Like, what would you say?
So all of those things play into it. I mean, the security issues, the regulatory issues. We function as a clinical decision support tool. We're registered as such. We're registered as a clinical diagnostic company. We have been we're audited for those things. We're in high trust audits, ISO standard audits. We perform at the same level of any hospital in the world with respect to data security and patient rights and patient data uh, ethical practices. So all of that is part of the foundation of the company. The other those things are in place, and they allow us to be a good partner with both individuals using our services and companies that partner with us in the supply of those services. Those are requirements, and they do require work. They just do. However, the challenges are currently we're in a growth phase, and the partnership with Microsoft and the Dragon Copilot is a very important one, both for the industry and I think for both our companies. They're doing clinical dictation. They're the leader in the world in clinical dictation software and in the use of AI to implement that. Canary Speech is the leader in the world for diagnosis, recognition of diseases as a clinical decision support tool using AI to accomplish that. When you combine those two things, you really have um, to to be a little embellished here a canary. You know, you have this bird that just sings, you know, and makes you happy. And Canary Speech is a company bringing AI driven technologies as an early warning system to identify and augment information that clinical teams have and to provide feedback to individuals who are managing their own lives, you know, in the consumer space. So those are the kind of things we're doing. The biggest challenge is the rollout. We have 14 ongoing clinical um, uh, projects right now developing and further validating other work that we're doing, new diseases that are coming on board. But we also are rolling out with Microsoft to hundreds of hospitals. And that rollout is an exciting one. I mean, it's exciting when you're sitting with people and they realize that it's like a force multiplier. You know, it provides clinical teams with information in the moment that they're with the patient that allows them not only to drive decision making, to augment decision making, but also maybe even to influence what the next question is going to be, because there may be complete conformity between what a person is saying and what Canary Speech is saying, or there may be a disconnect. And if there's a disconnect, that allows them to explore that with them. And they may be identifying things opportunistically that the patient didn't come there for. They may have come there for a general checkup, and the patient is identified as having a cognitive issue for the first time in their life. And believe me, that's happened hundreds of times. Um, and or they come in and they're there for just their annual checkup, but Canary identifies that they have elevated anxiety or depression. And the clinician at that moment can help resolve that, or they could refer them to a specialist. So that's where Canary Speech plays in. And it's that rollout right now that is a challenge, only to the extent that it requires a certain amount of lift because we have hundreds of hospitals.
It's just this. It's more like a logistical nightmare just to get it rolled out to everybody. But it's at least with the Microsoft's backing, that leverage that comes to the table becomes something really massive. And I'm really touched by one thing you said, that you said that someone was sort of like diagnosed for the first time in their life with using Canary Speech, and particularly for people well, in this part of the world where I'm from, in like Southern Africa, the mentalities in this part of the world tend to be people tend to not want to admit to be struggling, either with depression or anxiety, because everyone's just like, nah, like I had bigger struggles than you. As you said, your dad was crawling through trenches in World War II. So that kind of sort of like generational approach to mental health issues probably makes it harder for Africans to admit that. So now if there's like a tool then that they can use to actually measure, to actually sort of like give them a quantitative measure to say, okay, this day this was your points when you're happy, this is your points today. Then you can actually say, you know what, I'm not feeling happy, and this also is confirming to that. So the potential of this is going to be really great, and but it's and I'm kind of grateful that you're working on this. It's going to be really touching a lot of people's lives, and then sort of like coming towards like the last part of the podcast, is one thing that I always ask people here is that, because what you're saying already sounds so futuristic, right? And but this is actually what you have right now in the current day, modern day. So the question is, based on what you have right now versus the future, what do you think the future is going to be when it comes to like algorithms picking up anxiety and depression in people? Do you think, and again, feel free to go as science fiction as you want to this answer, but I was thinking, like, could this even also be integrated in robotic devices and stuff, and like every robot would just come with Canary Speech as part of it, and then to tell you how you're feeling today as you interact with it? Like, how far do you think we are going, and what does the future have in store for us when it comes to picking up anxiety and depression?
um, and a whole range of different diseases, I think. And I think we should, in consistent with what you're talking about, one of the things that I realized as early as my childhood, I grew up in, my father passed away when I was 8 years old, 9 years old. My mom had five children in her home. And she was caring for her grandfather, um,
Oh,
and so we were right on the edge. My dad had been sick for many years, and we were right on the edge of just being able to remain in our home. After Dad died, mm, the thoughts I had for weeks after that, and even years after that, was, would we be here next month? And so that impacted on my life. I had a lot of individuals that helped us along the way. Um, Healthcare is one of those things that should not be predicated on where an individual happened to be born in the world. I I believe inherent in who we are as human beings is an empathy that someone should be able to have certain basic needs met. One of which is healthcare, and the other is education, and the other is an ability to recognize their potentials. So from my standpoint, you can contribute with your life, you can contribute in certain ways, and what Canary Speech is, a vehicle for us to say, regardless of where you live in the world, regardless of where you happen to be, we should be able to provide objective, meaningful, and actionable information to clinical teams that may, in fact, not be where you are. They may be at Cleveland Clinic, or they may be at Hackensack Meridian in New Jersey, and that, but serving people in different parts of the world with information. We've done work with remote populations where their connectivity was their cell phone. We have wonderful abilities today to connect, to capture audio and information, facial information and audio information that can provide a clinical team with actionable information on understanding the health condition of a person in a remote environment so that a person can have expert health care without having the expert in their village or in their community or where they live. And so that's my hope for the future, is that regardless of where an individual lives in the world, they can they can expect to have the same level of health care. And this is going to extend well beyond understanding what needs to be done, which is what Canary is doing. It's providing individuals, clinical team members, with enough information to make an accurate diagnosis. The diagnosis is done by them, but it's based on information they have and or can acquire through the conversation with a person. But there are many, many, many other things futuristically that will occur that will allow us to deliver healthcare, literally to deliver it to remote locations, to engage populations so that we can allow individuals to become better trained, to have a broader understanding. Information should be free, and it is free and is available. So people can progress in a way in which we have the ability to care for individuals regardless of where they are in the world, regardless of what language they're speaking. um, and and so my mom had 5 children in her home when my dad passed away, and her father she was caring for. I can promise you, I don't remember a night in which that burden didn't cause her to cry herself to sleep. My hope is that we can impact on populations so that the mothers that are caring and fathers that are caring for children can realize that they have the resources that are necessary to accomplish that. That's my hope. Okay, and our future has a real potential to bring that. It just does. And so I think regardless of where we happen to live in the world, our concerns should be focused on that. Now, sometimes that's happening right here in our own community. I can promise you it does in this community, and there are people to help and things to do. And but that's my hope, that the technology advancements, the use of AI, will draw us together as communities so that the distance between us becomes irrelevant.
Wow, wow, that's really amazing. And like, I'm really sorry to hear about your dad, and I'm sure you'll be proud of what you've been able to build. And it's just amazing, and I think it's going to be a great sort of like equalizer in terms of reducing the disparities that exist in medical accessibility, medical technology, and it's one of the things that like even drove me myself to be to do biomedical engineering. So I'm really happy to hear all of this, and it's the amount of leverage this technology will have and the impact that it will have on the planet is amazing. And I think there's even more to come. And but I'm really grateful for your time today on the podcast. And before you go, just one more thing that I usually ask is like, how can people reach out to you if they wanted to send you some questions? Can they text you on LinkedIn, or should they just contact your company website? Do you guys have a platform for people to reach out to you, or any conferences you're attending, etc.?
So we're definitely available on LinkedIn, and I'm on LinkedIn, Henry O'Connell. Our emails are simple. I'm Henry at canaryspeech.com. Um, and our website does have, and we do respond to it regularly. We respond to every inquiry we are asked, regardless of where it's coming from. So our website is www.canaryspeech.com. Pretty straightforward. And I personally, I love to get inquiries. Anyone who reaches out to me, I will personally respond to.
Nice, nice. No, that's really good. And yeah, thank you very much for coming on the podcast today.
Thank you very much.